Okay, so before we move on and talk about the specifics of how meiosis happens, let's talk about some terms that we need to know. So diploid means having 2 of each chromosome. Di means 2. So diploid, you have 2 of each chromosome, and we say that you have 2N. N is the number of pairs. So humans have a 2N, or a diploid number, of 46. Not all organisms have 46 chromosomes. Some have 4, some have, I don't know, 1,000. There's a lot. So that's diploid. When you make haploid cells, that has half the number, which is N equals 23. So instead of 2N, meaning that we have 2 of each homologous pair, here we have just N, meaning we have 1 of each, what would be a homologous pair. So 1 of each chromosome. So 1 number 1, 1 number 2, 1 number 3, blah, blah, blah. And then either an X or a Y, depending on the process of meiosis. Okay, so we got diploid, haploid. The sperm and the egg are haploid. When they fuse together in fertilization, the nuclei of the 2 cells fuse and create another diploid cell. And then that cell starts doing mitosis to create the grown-up person. So then those people in the either ovaries or testes do meiosis to create eggs and sperm, which then fuse to create a new diploid cell, which does mitosis to create a new human. Okay, this process is called cellular or sexual reproduction. Does not actually have to, well, okay, it does not have to involve sexual intercourse. Sexual reproduction just means it's reproduction by the fusion of haploid cells. Okay, by fusion of an egg and a sperm. Some organisms do this by just broadcasting their eggs and or sperm into the environment. So things like sea urchins, they just release their eggs and sperm into the water, and if they're lucky, the eggs and sperm fuse and create new sea urchins. Plants, the egg stays on the female plant, the male plant releases its sperm that, you know, may be carried by an insect or just carried by the wind to a female plant that fused to create a new plant. If you have allergies like I do, you can thank plant sperm for that. Yes, you're literally allergic to plant orgasms, right? Okay. So we already talked about mitosis. Now we're going to talk about meiosis. It's kind of easy to get these two confused. Mitosis happens in all the cells in your body, including your toes. Get it? Mitosis. Get it? And meiosis only happens in specialized cells like in the ovaries and the testes. Okay, so meiosis, ovaries and testes. Mitosis, toes. Okay? All right, so here's the basic system that's going to happen. We start out with a pair of homologous chromosomes. Now we're showing 1 red and 1 blue. The red is the maternal chromosome that this individual got from its mother. The blue is the paternal chromosome that this individual got from its father. Okay, so this one came in the egg, this one came in the sperm, that then fused to create this person. During interphase, both of those chromosomes duplicate their DNA just the way we did before mitosis. Okay, that process is the same. We end up with sister chromatids attached at the centromeres. During the first phase of meiosis, the homologous pairs separate so that we end up with 2 cells, and each cell has 1 chromosome made up of 2 sister chromatids. And then we're going to do another phase of meiosis, cleverly named Meiosis 2, where we separate the sister chromatids. And we end up then with 4 cells because we've done 2 divisions. So when in mitosis, all we do is separate the sister chromatids. We just have to do 1 phase. Meiosis, we have 2 phases so that we can separate the homologous pairs to make sure that each cell has one of each kind of chromosome. And then the second division, we separate the sister chromatids. All right, so let's go through all the steps. Interphase is the same. It's just the cell being the cell doing whatever it's doing. Now, in the human ovaries and testes, these cells aren't actually doing any, they're just sitting there, just waiting. In the human ovaries, these cells have been sitting there since before birth. They're just waiting to get called into the game. Just saying, put me in, coach. Now, in Meiosis One, the phases are Prophase One, Metaphase One, Anaphase One, Telophase One, and Cytokinesis One. Always include the 1 or 2 when you're talking about meiosis, because we have 2 of each. In mitosis, obviously there's only 1, so you don't have to include that. But in meiosis, always include the 1 or the 2. So in Prophase One, the homologous chromosomes line up together, and then they do this really cool thing called crossing over, where they literally cross over legs of their chromosomes and swap genetic material. Yeah, they actually like trade legs. Like imagine that you could line up with your best friend and just like you take an arm and I'll take your arm, and now we have each other's right arms. Okay, that's what your chromosomes do. That's called crossing over. Then in metaphase, the homologous pairs line up together along the metaphase plate. And this makes sense because we're going to separate the pair. So we need them to line up in pairs so that one of each pair can be pulled in each direction. Then in anaphase, the homologous pairs separate. The sister chromatids stay stuck together. And then telophase and cytokinesis are exactly the same as they are in mitosis. We reform the nuclear envelope, create the cleavage furrow, separate the cells. And in plant cells, actually it's going to happen more like this than it does in normal plant cells. We're just going to worry about animal cells. All right, now, Prophase 2 looks a lot like prophase, or it looks like prophase in mitosis. And that's because meiosis 2 is exactly the same as mitosis. So once you know mitosis, you know meiosis 2. Then in Prophase 2, the nuclear envelope breaks down, the chromosomes condense, the spindle fibers start to form. Metaphase 2, the chromosomes line up at the metaphase plate, the spindle fibers attach. Anaphase 2, the sister chromatids are pulled apart, spindle fibers shorten. Telophase 2, the nuclear envelope reforms, and the cytokinesis, the 2 cells separate. And we end up with 4 cells, each with 23 chromosomes, haploid cells, because we started out with 46 and separated the pairs first. And so each of these cells is going to go through this process. So we end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end of meiosis. Cool? Okay, stop there. And then in the next part, we'll look at some more details of all this.